Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's webinar, the latest edition in our series of webinars where we look at all things related to data, analytics, reporting, AI. So we run a variety of these on various different topics. This morning's topic is specifically focused around the hospitality sector, looking at the rising costs that the sector is seeing, and the sort of strategies that maybe we can employ to mitigate those. So these webinars usually run for something in the region of sort of 30 to 45 minutes, although that's probably going to depend on some of the questions that you might ask us. Before we start, a few sort of housekeeping messages. We're going to record this session, so you will get a link from us in the next few days back to the recording. So if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, please do. We'll also be uploading it onto our website and to our YouTube channel, so you can point people there as well. If you've got any questions, by all means, please use the Q&A. Trish is looking after the Q&A for us this morning, so she'll be making sure I don't miss any of those questions, although we'll probably cover them towards the end when we have a Q&A session. So my panel this morning, I'm going to introduce them in just a moment, but let me begin by introducing myself. So I'm Simon Blackbourne. I'm Business Development Director of Ometis. Some of you may be wondering why I'm at Ometis. You may know me from Tahola. I spent 25 years at Tahola as one of the founders of that business, and I sold it to Ometis back in December of last year. So we formed a larger, stronger business by bringing two organisations together. I'll talk a little bit more about Ometis in just a moment. Joining me today in the office here, I've got my colleague John Townsend. John joined us just over a month ago from the New World Trading Company. John is our head hospitality data strategist. He's got a long-standing history in the hospitality sector, working for a variety of different operators and in a variety of different roles in operations, finance and systems. And also joining us is a man who probably needs very little introduction, as I'm sure many people will know him. Is Chris Fletcher, who is founder of Tech on Toast, and again, like John, a long history in the hospitality sector. I think working for companies like Carluccio's, which is where I first met him, Prime Minister, Hard Rock Cafe, and I'm no doubt there's some others in there as well. So we're gonna be able to talk about a whole variety of different areas of the hospitality sector. Right. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with Ometis, let me just give you a little bit of a background about us. We are a data and analytics specialist consulting partner. We are Click's #1 partner in the UK. We help organisations to get more value from their data. And that means helping them with things like a data strategy, which could involve digital transformation solutions, looking at data integration, looking at transformation, looking at governance and data literacy. That leads us then into things like dashboarding, reporting, advanced analytics, predictive capabilities, even financial analytics and budgeting and forecasting, and of course AI as well. So we cover the full spectrum of data and analytics capabilities, working with what we consider to be some of the world's leading technology suppliers. So we're working with the likes of Click, as I've mentioned, Microsoft with Power BI and Fabric, organisations like Snowflake, Jedox, Infinity and Databricks. So we're reasonably agnostic when it comes to the technologies that you might want to employ. Importantly for today's audience, we have a dedicated hospitality team, which I run here at Ometis. John and I work together on that, but we also have our own team of developers, support team, business analysts as well, to help with and work with our customers. So, Chris, let's talk a little bit about Tech on Toast. Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro rather than me do it around the your Tech on Toast business?
Yes, thank you. Lovely to meet you all this morning, and glad you can all hear. It's always fun at the start, isn't it? Yeah, I've known Simon for a few years now. As he mentioned, I was in operations for, oh my God, more years than I want to mention, but probably 20 plus years across brands like Coluccio's, Hard Rock Cafe, most recently Pie Minister on the board there selling pies, but Virgin Active, Sky TV, stuff like that as well across my career. So had a great time. And really, like a lot of people hit the pandemic, I was buying technology for Pie Minister to get us through the pandemic, and was getting really frustrated with the ability to find it, sense check it, kind of reference it, and make sure that even though my mates were saying it was good, that it actually was, and I can get ROI. So started recording podcasts, really just meeting founders of technology companies, understanding their purpose, why they did it, and then realized there was a bit of a space there, and started building a community. And now we have over 45,000 people within our community. We have events going on left, right, and centre. A new magazine coming out tonight in London in about 6 hours, and lots of other stuff going on in between. But we help tech partners find new customers, essentially, and we also find the operators kind of understand their strategy. But not dissimilar to Ometis, is that we will kind of help you map out your tech stack and help you understand what you need going forward. So it's been really interesting. It's definitely a need for it. There's more than us just doing it, I'm sure. But I think the problems are evergreen in hospitality, unfortunately, and we're seeing them head on, and I'm sure we'll get into them today. But lovely to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris. So, let's get into the real core of this discussion then. So, ever since COVID, everybody knows that the hospitality sector has been under huge pressure from increasing costs. And there's just more and more costs being loaded onto it. The latest budget didn't help that. We all know that, with the increases to employer NI, the threshold at which it becomes payable, increase in national living wage. We've then got energy costs, we've got food costs as well. And this is a slide that UK Hospitality presented recently at a webinar that they ran. And worryingly, it's showing that 31% of operators said that in Q1 they operated their business at a loss. That's a huge number of organisations. But if we look back at the previous two bars as well, where we're looking at those that are broken even and a reduced profit, that takes us to almost 3/4 of operators around the country are talking about their businesses that are struggling. Over the weekend, I read another article from UKH saying, that since the last budget, 69,000 people in hospitality have lost their jobs, and that number could increase to 200,000. So, it's a difficult time. And the question is, what can we do about it? How can we help? Because often when these changes are made, particularly the regulatory ones, enforced on by government, very difficult to change and at least reduce. So, Chris, let me come to you first, because you talk to a lot of operators. What are they telling you about the sorts of challenges that they are facing in their businesses?
I mean, as I mentioned before, these challenges, before you look at this slide, actually, the evergreen challenges of food cost, labor, running a restaurant business or a hospitality business with people is difficult, right? And it's not for everybody. So it's been challenging for a while. I think what we're seeing now is that there's a consolidation piece going on. We're having a lot of operators coming to us saying, and they're holistically looking at their businesses saying, how do we look at it from a technology angle where we are supporting our people that we have and we want to keep them, our employees, but also how to encourage more customers through the front end of our technology to keep bringing people back. And it's very difficult. I think one of the biggest problems we have, or that we see, is that people are building tech stacks on top of old tech stacks. So they're obviously, you buy technology as you grow, and if you get to a certain size, or you sit down for a minute and look at what you've got, there's a lot of problems within that tech stack with integrations, automation, all that kind of stuff not being built in. So we spend a lot of time unpicking that. But the challenges are, as you said, Simon, there's challenges around costs on every level, energy, people, food, particularly at the moment as well. And unpicking that it seems easy if you just go on a tech website and say, look, we can save you X by doing this, but actually there's a lot more complexity to putting that in and enabling those people to solve those problems. And also the other issue they have is that the stakeholders in every part of that business that own a bit of tech. So actually trying to fix some of these issues or combat some of these problems that have been set by the government in reality is very difficult, because you have to get the whole buy-in from the team. There rarely is, apart from in the bigger enterprise type brands where you have one point of truth, like a CTO who you would deal directly with. So it's becoming a challenge, and the biggest problems they have is kind of understanding where they're at, looking where they need to get to, and unpicking it all. But the problems are revenue based, cost based. I'm not laughing. I'm just saying it's challenging. It's hugely challenging. But that's what we're seeing on a daily basis, and we're talking to people from all different sizes. The smaller guys are looking to automate and be smart with their technology from when they get going before they grow. Obviously, for the larger companies, that's more difficult because they're already in a place where they need to look at consolidation. So yeah, that's what we're seeing regularly.
And those legacy tech stacks are hard to change as you become a large organization as well, because there's just so much involved in replacing a system.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you see the shiny thing and everybody kind of looks at that. But the reality is we need to fix problems for operators that are simple wins. Try and find quick wins, simplicity. I know that actually we're going to talk about this later on, but finding really visible wins where we can measure ROI, that it's the single biggest challenge, I think, in technology, trying to work out where the start and the end is and what the return is, because someone's got to sign a check to agree that this is a good thing to do and the right thing to do. And it's just about understanding that journey of going there, because I'm a big advocate of technology, and I think it has a huge place in the industry, but it's about understanding what it's going to do for us, and I think that's still up in the air for a lot of people.
Yeah, John, coming to you. You joined us just over a month ago from New World Trading Company, and talk a little bit maybe about some of the challenges that you were looking to address there. How do they look?
Yeah, I mean, as we've said before, a lot of the points on the screen you can't control. You can't control the kind of the increases we've seen in national living wage, or the increases that we've seen in energy over the last few years. So really, you've got to go back to basics to control what you can control. So from a New World perspective, we had to prioritise. So we looked at labour first. We looked at kind of the scheduling, and it wasn't necessarily about cutting, but making sure that there was no fat there, and it was making sure that it was as efficient as possible. The danger is if you just take a hatchet to a roach and start cutting hours, which we can all do, the only person that really suffers is the guest. And as Chris said before, you want that loyalty piece, you want them to come back. But we had to prioritise them. So it was labour to begin with. We then had the demands on supply chain and particularly around food costs that went up, and then everyone thought would kind of plateau, and then just and went again, and continues to go, kind of continues to increase even now. And then we had to focus on energy and look at, we know we can't change the cost of the energy that we're buying, so we've got to look at usage. But really, we had to tier them into priorities. So it was labour, and as Chris said, cost of goods and energy.
Yeah. So it seems to be we want to try and control the things that we can control. So ultimately, if we're going to make changes, we need to look at focusing on improving sales and controlling our costs. Now, we know from talking to our customers that they've put a load of strategies in place to try and make changes to their businesses to improve, efficiency and performance. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them on the screen here. So, obvious things like increasing prices, looking at, changing CapEx investments, looking at staffing hours, all of those sorts of things. We know everybody's doing them. But if we bring this back to a data point of view, which is the area where we can influence things, are there ways in which data can be used? And hopefully there are. I hope I'm going to get the right answers to these questions now. Are there ways in which data can be used that can make it more effective and more efficient? So, John, talk about some of the things that maybe you see data having an influence in.
Yeah, I mean, I think within all companies, you'll have all these different platforms, and for example, your labour scheduling probably predicts a forecast. But what we're seeing now is that we can use the data that we've got to kind of machine learn and accurately create better forecasts for our teams. So that, and really that's the linchpin of the hospitality business, isn't it? If you get your forecast right, you've got your staffing based on that forecast. You've got your stock based on that forecast. So what we've seen is if we can use the data that we've experienced over the last kind of 6-12 weeks to create accurate forecasts for our team, it starts them at a better place, and then we can alert them to when we're deviating from that forecast and when we need to make changes, so that we're not reviewing things kind of the week or the month after when it's too late. And I'm sure you see this as well, Chris, when you speak to people. It's all these platforms, they serve a purpose and they do a different part of the journey, but it's only when you bring them all together that's where the power is in it. Otherwise, they're all just kind of working in silo.
Yeah, totally. I think on that point, actually, it's like a jigsaw, isn't it? And I think putting it all together, very rarely do you be able to sit as a business. This is what we talk about in the same with the tech stack, to be able to visualize your business on one dashboard or two dashboards, to be able to have a look at it and say, look, this is what we're looking like and these are the problems we could solve. I think shining a light on a problem in terms of data always leads to a result, right? Because you can plan properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's getting that right result in front of the right person. And data can be quite overwhelming. I mean, those of us that look at it every day are really comfortable with it. But some of the frontline teams, for example, they might dip into this for 10-15 minutes a day at most. So it needs to be presented in the right format, the right time, and to the right person. And other ways that we were using data is that we were looking at, we know that customers are going out less. We see that, but we know that they're probably spending more on that rare occasion they do go out. So what can we do? We know that if we deliver an amazing experience to them, they're going to come back and they're going to tell others. But how can we look at things like spend per head? How can we dig into that? How do we look at which sites are already doing that well, and within that site, which employees are already kind of outperforming company average, and what can we learn from them really? To kind of help move the business forward, and they're all the sorts of things that we would do with the data that we had. And as you say, some of this will sit in these platforms, but it's quite cumbersome to get to. It's not presented in a way that is intuitive to the team, and it's quite difficult to compare yourself, particularly to your peers if you're within a branded organisation, you've got multiple outlets. And just thinking about other ways that we use data, we know that food costs are increasing. And continue to, and the same for drink. So menu optimization, that development piece is huge, and being able to get to kind of product level information and compare it to customer reviews, for example, and what your customers are saying about your food and drink is so important. I imagine every operator sat on here went through some form of menu engineering piece, thinking, well, I'll re-engineer my menu and I'll change the layout and we'll see what we can do. And really, it has a minor influence on behaviour, but the customer's probably got an idea of what they're going to have before they come. So you're not going to divert them from one dish to another. So the only way really to increase that spend is to use your team and to see what bits you can add on to their experience to make better. And as I say, I'm sure the conversations you have with other operators, they say similar.
Well, it just reminded me, Chris, actually of a conversation you and I had a number of years ago, and I can't remember whether it was at Pi or whether it was at college. It was about menu engineering, and you said that the accessibility of the data enabled you to review the menu more regularly and to make changes to it more often.
Actually, I do remember this chat, and it was around Antonio's favourite dish, pasta fagioli. This is going back a bit, but pasta fagioli was his favourite soup that we had on the appetizer menu, and we took it off due to some feedback we had from probably about 5 or 6 sites maybe, but actually the reality was that when we looked into the data properly and actually did some analysis on it, that we'd taken away one of the best performing dishes in the company. And it sounds really stupid to do that, but actually we were focusing on margins and stuff like that, and we were looking at costs. But the reality is that the same at Pie Minister, we had I think 16 or 20 different SKUs of pie, so they all look the same obviously to a customer, but to us they're all the different flavors and ingredients. And actually being able to rank them and being able to understand exactly what was selling, and by location and by day part, that kind of stuff, it's absolutely invaluable. And a lot of people will listen to this and go, yeah, but of course we do that. But I still think I think John mentioned it before, saying that actually there's 10-15 minutes of time spent on these things. This needs real analysis, real understanding, and actually making a decision and tracking that decision and seeing the result of it. And I think it really, I mean, the people that are doing it correctly, you're seeing some fantastic results.
So these are the sorts of, if you like, the business solutions that can be delivered from data. But what do we need in terms of tech to be able to deliver this? So John, what do you see in terms of the technology that's needed to enable this to happen?
I think just picking on the point that Chris has just made around that 10, 15 minutes is that a lot of the decisions need to be made before it reaches the team. So what you're providing them with is, rather than kind of reams and reams of data, it's insight and it's information they can use to make a decision. So it's things like automation. How do you automate daily sales reports? How do you automate prep and par levels for your team? So you already have they have an idea of what they're going to sell, but we know what they're going to sell based on what they've sold over the last 6, 10, 12 weeks. If we can provide that to the team kind of automatically on a day and say, today you are going to sell X amount of pasta dishes and you need this many pizza bases and you need this many burger patties out based on your current forecast and what's gone before, then that's one less kind of manual task for them to do. We can do things like we can alert them. So again, we know what we're going to sell, and if we know we've outperformed forecast Monday to Wednesday, we can alert them and say, we think you're going to run out of this product based on your forecast, based on what your stock take from Monday, and based on what you've ordered. You're going to run out of this, so you need a plan. Is it order more? That might not be an option. So do you need to stock the fridges with something else, or let your team know? So when it gets to 5 o'clock on Saturday, everyone's not running around going, we've run out of the top selling beer. We knew that was coming, and we had a plan in place. There's things like collaboration and communication is a huge piece, and I imagine you get this all the time, Chris, particularly in the tech stack world, is how do the team communicate? Is it Teams? Is it Slack? Is it operators' worst nightmare, WhatsApp in this uncontrollable bubble? But there needs to be a way to communicate around this data and to collaborate and say, well, this has happened. Why has it happened? And what are we going to do about it? And there's no point doing that 1, 2, 3 weeks later, or sitting at a periodic review 4 weeks after the period's closed and go, this happened 8 weeks ago. We kind of need to know now when we can make an impact and when we can kind of change the course of what is going on. And then for me, I guess from my operations background, is that you don't have the advantage of being able to sit behind a laptop for hours on end and interrogate the data and really draw some conclusions, particularly from the operator out there. They're mobile, they're on the go, they're looking at information on a phone or a tablet as they're walking in to meet the team and to make these decisions. So whatever we do has got to be, you can view it anywhere, anytime, any place. We don't want it to be kind of static and they've got to jump through hoops to get at that data. And Chris, as I say, I'm sure you hear this all the time, is that people just want to be able to get at the information and not have to log in here and be signed up to this and really jumping through those hoops to get the information they need to make change and decisions about their businesses.
Yeah, and if you think about the leaders running businesses today to compare to when I was running a business, it's changing, right? These people grew up with an iPhone, so it's no longer me who knew the world before an iPhone. And I think their impatience and expectations of having data mobile first ready at the touch of a button is now, and they're already at that point. And the tech companies and the operators who are purchasing tech need to also understand that point, because it is going to be a competitive advantage going forward, that actually if you've got first mobile data ready to hand in seconds, you are going to win. I mean, you're going to win in certain circumstances. And I think there's some really good examples that we've worked with companies over the past year or so where we've seen results quite quickly against some of these costs that you're talking about.
So if what we're saying is, we've got operators large and small, all with a whole variety of different systems and lots of data, and we've got tech capabilities that we can deliver these days, what's holding people back? Chris, are you talking to people and they're saying to you, they don't know these solutions exist, or are they too costly? Are the investment models wrong? Are they not aware that they're around?
All of the above, Simon. So
okay.
Yeah, I think the lack of education around technology is, as I said at the start, the reason we started Tech on Toast. And education sounds like I'm dismissing people's capabilities. It's not that. There's a lot. There's 150 suppliers in our marketplace alone, and I think understanding what's out there, but really understanding, we'll talk about this a bit and again in a minute, is use cases, understanding why you would buy that piece of technology to fix this certain problem. That's what we see as our job, to help people understand how to navigate that part. But that is one of the biggest blockers. That we sat in a room with a very large pub company about 6 months ago. We did a presentation around their tech stack, what they had and what they, almost like bullseye, what you could have won and what you could get. And the conversation in the room was very much about their department. Each stakeholder was talking about their need for this, their need for that. And I believe there's a real opportunity here to tie all this together with these companies and really sit there and go, right, where's the one point of truth for delivery of these technology systems versus our employee experience versus our customer experience. So yes, there's a lack of education. There's a lack of, obviously there's a budget issue because they need to be sure that ROI they place against a new piece of tech is going to deliver. And that's very hard to prove in a sales process, right? You can talk to and have case studies and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, in my business, what's the point of me changing this system for this system? So there's an ROI argument. But then there's also the actual functionality. And they've been burned, a lot of these guys before, with poor systems or poor integration or poor customer service, which has caused a real blockage in the system. And I think, and there's the guys that have the all-in-one scenario versus best in class, where they have bought a product that will do everything or do everything. And if they take that out, they have to take another number of other products out. So it's almost landlocking technology across the estates. So I won't mention the groups, but there's some large groups who can do more than one thing. And that for us is becoming more and more common, where the best in class scenario where someone wants to sell in is becoming challenging for the operators, because they don't want to manage multiple integrations all the time. It just depends on the size of the business. But yes, Simon, the 4 or 5 examples you gave at the start there are all an issue. But most of all, they want help. I think the most exciting thing about it is that they're asking for help, which I think is very different to 12, 24 months ago, where it wasn't really on the agenda. Now I feel like people are interested in what's going on, what's coming up, and how they can fix things. But it's definitely a slow-moving process.
And it's interesting what you say about, as tech companies, we've probably got to be a bit more honest with customers, and not just say yes to every question that they ask, because you do get burned. And I've spoken to a number of operators recently, and they're almost asking me to prove that we can do everything. We know that we can, but because they've been in situations in the past where they've been uncomfortable because they haven't got everything that was promised to them, we've just got to be more honest with our customers.
Yeah, and I think the RFP process, or as it was, where people, if no one's an RFP, where you fill out all of the questions that if you're buying a house, you want all these different things. You want 5 rooms, 2 bathrooms. Same for technology. You list all the things you want to achieve from your product. And we work at Tech on Toast on an 80-20 rule. We say, look, aim for 80% of those features that you need to run your business, and accept that actually 20% might not be there yet. And it may be on a roadmap, which we all love to hear, but actually that's the truth. And working to 100% is very difficult and often upsetting, and will just annoy everybody around the table. So yeah, I always think head for 80%, and then if you get any more, you're doing really well, because these companies don't build just for you. They build for a number of customers, and it's just about understanding that as well. So there's a lot of pull and push in these conversations. But Simon, you've been around the block in the nicest sense of the word. Right? You've seen a lot of this over the years, and I think it is getting better. Integrations are improving. Technology is obviously improving every day. So I think there's a real opportunity around the corner.
Yeah. So, Chris, the operators that you're talking to, are you seeing particular trends in those conversations that you're having around, I suppose, specifically from our point of view, data? Is data a topic that's coming up? Are you seeing it, trending regularly, or is it more other topics that are more important to operators?
It depends on the size, I would say. I think data comes into play, and when you get to like above 3, 4, 5 sites, all of a sudden you start to have data conversations, because the operators are aware that actually having the data at hand will enable them to do more. Personalized data to their customers, personalize the employee experience, whatever it might be. So that's becoming more and more common. We've managed to get through 32 minutes of a webinar without mentioning AI, which is quite an achievement. So, and that obviously is the other thing that's popping up.
We did that on purpose.
Well, it's popping up a lot, and I think they're all asking about it. I think it's one of we've had to update the marketplace just to reflect it, because people were asking, where is it? So I think the risk on this, like any trend, is that actually, if you don't understand what you're using it for, don't buy it. So if you haven't got a real use case, and I spoke to John briefly about this before, I'm sure he'll expand on this point, but if you haven't got a real use case where you can take AI and apply it, whether it's machine learning or whether it's like a ChatGPT large language model, where you can apply it and see a real result, and like, so remove, a good example is recruitment. So you have 400 job applications for one role. You can use a product that I know, I won't mention it, that can reduce that in 2 minutes, do all the interviews and give you a short list of like 10 CVs. So it's a real time-saving tool that delivers the same result as you would get by interviewing, because you set the interview standard. So that is a really good example of a use case. I think if you haven't got that and you're just trying to overlay AI into your business, it's fairly dangerous and distracting, to be honest. And I think until we get to a point where AI is good enough to be used across the board, I think understanding why you're using it and what you're going to get out of it, similar to the ROI conversation, has to be considered. And the other things we're seeing is all about accessibility, speed. We talked about this, about reporting relevant information to the right people at the right time. These are all questions we're being asked. Chris, how can we don't want this for all of our teams. The collaboration piece you mentioned, really important as well. That's something that we're being asked for a lot. How can we all work together but see from different hierarchies the information we need, and how can we input as well? So comms is a key thing. I think with Meta leaving, Meta closing down, not the whole of Meta, the communication platform that people have been using, there's a massive opportunity for tech companies who are selling those comms panels to go in and do a really great job for these operators, and there's some really good examples out there doing that at the moment. So yeah, I think this bit's quite exciting, because I think this is where we're going to see some real savings for when we looked at that first slide. The trend AI, I do think, will attack 3 or 4 of those things we're being pushed upon us, but it's going to take time.
It is. And I think if we've got time, we might just come back to AI at the end. But you touched on use cases. So just a few use cases from some of our customers, where we've worked together and what we've managed to achieve. And you can see here from, this is quite a range of different types of operators. We've got QSR here, we've got competitive socializing, casual dining, bar, restaurant groups. Taking GDK, removing 35 spreadsheets out of, their weekly process, automating a lot of that work, and then saving them, over 300 hours annually. That's a lot of time to put back into, in this case, the finance team, to be able to spend time analyzing data and getting into it in more detail. Red Engine was a different requirement altogether. They knew that they had lots of data. They knew that they needed to make better use of it. They wanted to build their own internal team, but they couldn't find the people. So what do? Do we sit and wait until they can recruit? No, we worked together and we helped them build a solution that brought together data from the UK and the USA. So they've now got all of that data together in one place. They can report on it as a group, and it's delivered faster revenue reporting. In the meantime, they have managed to find those people that they were looking for, and they've actually created a not insignificant data team in their business. A number, I think it's 4 or 5 people now as a data team that is helping drive that business forwards. Pizza Express, one of the largest casual dining groups in the country, lots of different systems, lots of data, reports crashing regularly because of the volume, architecture not being quite right. Help them to put the right architecture in place, the right structure, the right system, the right automation. And they're seeing over 20, nearly 30 days a year being saved, and access to that granular level of detail, even in an organisation that's got over 300 restaurants. So a significant change in performance of their business. John, I'm not going to talk about New World because you know it much better than I do. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that...
Yeah, of course. And we've put there kind of the saving in hours of manual reporting, but it wasn't in terms of a cash saving. It was let's deploy that somewhere else. And as Simon said before, about rather than someone sitting there for hours or a day a week, pulling reports and downloading 9 or 10 Excel sheets and sticking them into one, the report is automation done for them. And what they can do with that information, do with that time, is that they can analyze it and provide insight to the business. So rather than just sending out a report to 5 or 6 operators and let them all pull their own conclusions. Here is what the data is telling us. And New World, we had kind of 5 or 6 different systems all holding into one place. So as you mentioned, departments there's one report with everything on. You've not got to rummage through your emails to find out what the feedback was like from yesterday, and then you go on Teams to get the sales and go somewhere else to get compliance checks. It's all there for your operators, and you were able to almost do that by exception. Say, if you're running a business with 100 plus sites, maybe you want to know, maybe there's a few people that want to know everything, but the operators just need to know who's performed exceptionally well and who's performed kind of sub where we were expecting, and we can tackle those sites first. We can really kind of manage by exception rather than cascading all information to all people at all times.
And I remember you and I talking way before you joined Ometis about some of the results that you'd had at New World, and we talked about one of the KPIs that you particularly wanted was number of drinks per cover. You were of a view that not enough drinks were being sold to each table. Could we identify that, and could we drive that? And we were able to do that. Classic one was around the olives.
Olives, yeah.
40%, if I remember rightly, 40% of all your olives across the entire estate were sold by one person.
Yeah.
But they had no idea that was the case until the system was in place.
It was one of those dishes that sat on the menu, caused very little fuss from a prep level, and it just sat there. And it was only when it was almost by chance that we found it. We found that 40% of all the olives are across a state of kind of 35 plus sites were being sold by one individual in one site. And it was really using that data to go, well, what's this person doing? How are they doing it? And why isn't everybody else doing it? And actually, are they doing the right thing? Is it a dish that we want to push? And it was only by having that data that we were able to do it. And the drinks per cover was almost the kind of the holy grail for operators. There's only so many ways that you can get a customer to spend more. We know that we've all put prices up and things. So starter, side, and dessert is the obvious, but then there's a drink that goes with it. So we really struggled to get the information kind of out of the EPOS system, and we were able to build some logic and some criteria that said, this is what we classify as a drink, this is our cover, and just give us one number and let us track that number on a site basis, by day of the week, by day part, by hour, by quarter of an hour if we wanted to. So we could really see when our drink per cover was excelling, and see who was excelling, and again learn from them, and then build that into a training module. And we all thought that our training was right, and it's great, and it covered everything it needed to do, but there was clearly a gap there that we were missing, not everywhere, but in some sites.
I just wanted to comment on that, because with my operator hat on, actually being able to roll. Sometimes you get lots of stuff sent from head office, right? Do this, make more money, do this. I think that the reality and the strength in that kind of awareness of finding something like that is so easy for me as an ops director then to go and roll out across my estate. To say we're going to move the needle on this one product by X amount is so much easier to deliver than some crazy spreadsheet that someone's made up. So I just think that's really important to highlight sometimes, because we can come up with data, can unearth some fantastic insight, but it's actually how do you then apply it into operations. And I think the way John talked about how they did the 5p, was it the 5p? I can't remember the average spend increase. It's so crucial. And in Carluccio's used to run competitions, we used to blow the doors off, because it was a single focus for a short period of time on one product, and the guys killed it, which showed us that they had the ability to do it, but it's how we were delivering the message. So I think it's a really good example.
Now, I'm conscious of time. We've got one more slide left. I'm going to run through it really quickly, really just talking about, look, if you're interested, if there is something that we can do to help you, how do you go about doing this? This is a very simple example of typically the operators that we talk to, the structure of their systems is very much those sort of purple boxes at the top here. Lots of different systems. Reporting is manual. It's Excel based. It's time consuming. It's repetitive. It's difficult. It's fraught with potential errors, and this is a problem. The solution then is to look at the green and orange boxes below, where we've built an integration and automation layer that will pull those data sets together and present them back to you in a way that is intuitive and easy for you to use. And John and I were at an event yesterday with one of our customers talking, and just to another example of this, he mentioned something we'd never heard of, never talked about before, but he said, having the system in place, I can now track my NPS score against my sales over time. And I'm able to look at it either by an individual site or multiple sites, or some grouping of sites, or a period of time, or however I want it to look. And it gives me insight that there was no way I would ever been able to do with siloed systems. Now, we do come across some organisations who have got some sort of a structure like this in place already, but they're just not quite getting the results they expect. If that's the case, we're more than happy to have a look at that with you and see if there's anything we can do to help. So with that, I have very rapidly tried to bring things to our Q&A, conscious that we're running out of time. I'm not sure whether we've got any questions from anyone. If anybody wants to fire anything into the Q&A, then please do. Otherwise, John, I was just going to ask one question of you. Chris touched on AI. We talked about it yesterday at the conference we were at. Just give us your insight on AI.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very topical at the minute. It's all over the news, and anyone who's got children, I'm sure they're all obsessed with creating pictures on ChatGPT and things, and it's really, really powerful. But it's only powerful, as Chris said, if you're using it in the right way. If you're just using it as a gimmick or because it's a trend and it's not adding to the business, then it could be quite dangerous and lead people down the wrong path. For what it's worth, my opinion on it is that the power of AI, particularly in hospitality, comes from that machine learning, predictive analytics, and helping operators manage businesses, rather than asking a system, what were my sales yesterday? We can all find that out, but what we want to know is, how can we use what's gone before to predict what's coming, to ease pressure on teams and make sure that we've got things like staffing levels correct? Because that's one of the biggest pain points for operators, is when you get it wrong, it's tough. I mean, Chris, you remember this from I'm sure from being in sites. You get that forecast wrong, or you get kind of caught short with a number of staff. It's a really painful shift. So if you can use that to ease pressure for teams and use the machine learning capabilities of an AI type bot, then absolutely, why wouldn't you? And I believe that's where the power is for hospitality with data.
I agree.
And I think on that note,
I'm trying to keep it short for you, Simon.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. So thank you all for joining us this morning. I hope you found it useful, insightful. We run these sorts of webinars fairly regularly, so please watch out for any future ones that we'll be hosting. Thanks very much to everybody. Have a great day, and hopefully speak to some of you soon.
Thank you.